Howdy, howdy, howdy. I'd like to talk a little bit about how you can multiply fractions using an area model. So we'll start with an example of a product we want to find. In this case, we're going to find 3/7 times 1/4. I purposely picked this as an example because this isn't something that you would want to try to do with, say, a number line model or something like that. This is a pretty nasty multiplication for modeling with something other than an area model. That's not to say you can't, it's just the other models are not going to be quite as intuitive for most people. So the first thing we need to do is draw a unit square, and what that means is you want a square, which is a two-dimensional object with the length and width the same size, and you want it to be a unit square, so that means you want the sides to be 1 unit long each. So we have 1 unit for one dimension, 1 unit for the other dimension, and that means our two-dimensional object is 1 square unit, or 1 unit square. Okay, so once we have that, our goal is to represent 3/7 along one dimension. We'll put that along the left side here, and then model 1/4 along another dimension. We'll put it on the bottom side here. So in order to do that, we need to split this dimension we're going to model 3/7 on into 7 equal sized pieces. And similarly, we're going to want to split the side we're going to model the 1/4 on into 4 equal sized pieces. So I've done that here. Splitting into sevenths is a little hard for a lot of people to eyeball, but one thing to keep in mind is this is only a area model for modeling our thinking. This is not something that needs to be ridiculously precise. We're not using it to actually measure the area. We're just modeling our thinking. So we've got 7 equal-sized parts of this dimension here, and we've got 4 equal-sized parts of this dimension here. So next we need to identify 3 of the 7 equal-sized pieces along one dimension and 1 of the equal-sized pieces of the other dimension. And so that's what we've done here, is we've counted out 3 of these parts here and 1 part here. Now, what needs to happen is we need to then actually represent the full amounts here. So this is just kind of the setup. We haven't actually represented 3/7, we haven't actually represented 1/4. So now we're actually going to get ready for that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to follow the lines all the way across our shape. And that means 3/7 is going to be actually 3 of these rows, and 1/4 is going to be actually 1 of these columns. That gives us a whole bunch of equal-sized rectangles within our square. Those are going to be important because they're equal-sized rectangles. Those are going to be the parts of our square unit. So next, since we have 3/7 is 3 of these rows and 1/4 is 1 of these columns, 3/7 times 1/4, which I've represented with the cross for multiplication just to emphasize that we're thinking of this as a region that's 3/7 in one dimension by 1/4 in another dimension. So that means the area of the thing we're looking for, 3/7 times 1/4, is actually a 3/7 by 1/4 rectangle. That's this thing. Okay. That rectangle we have here is a total of 3 of these smaller rectangles. So we have 3 of these smaller rectangles represents our rectangle, but our rectangle is only a tiny bit of our square unit. Our square unit consists of 28 of those small rectangles. You can get that 28 by counting, of course, or you can remember that there were a total of 7 equal-sized pieces along one dimension and 4 equal-sized pieces along another dimension, which means you have a total of 7 times 4 equals 28 of these rectangles. Similarly, although it was very easy to count 1, 2, 3 that make up this smaller rectangle here, that actually comes from the fact that there were 3 along one dimension, 3 parts of the 7 parts, and 1 along the other dimension, 1 part of the 4 parts. So this also comes from a product 3 times 1. So finally, when we put this all together to say how big the rectangle representing the product actually is, we say that is 3 out of 28. In other words, our product represents the area of 3/28 of a square unit. I hope this was helpful.